This week in our Independence Day episode of the Jerusalem Post podcast, the podcast hosts Tzur Goldin, brother of Hadar Goldin, whose body has been held hostage in Gaza for over 10 years, to discuss what Independence Day means in this time and age while Hadar is still being held. This is the Jerusalem Post podcast. I'm your host, Tamar Uriel-Beeri. I am the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Report, and I'm joined once more by Eve Young, domestic affairs and economics correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. Hey, Eve.
Hey, Tamar.
I'm sitting on a cushion.
You're sitting on a pillow. It's my favorite thing.
It's okay.
I don't know how we're going to talk about serious news stories when you're sitting on a pillow.
It's hard to take me seriously, I'm sure, especially with my
Your feet are
little
literally
feetsies.
dangling. You can't see this at home, but she's kicking her
they
feet.
can. This is on YouTube
I
as
hope
well.
that you can see this at home, but she's kicking her feet.
I'm kicking my little feet.
Her feet are a kicking.
I honestly, it's kind of fun. I feel like a child. I'm regressing in the best way.
You're wearing ponytails.
I'm pigtails. Yeah,
excuse me.
I'm wearing a little dress. I'm feeling my oats. Do you know what that term means?
No.
It's kind of like I'm enjoying how I feel with myself right now.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's fun. Anyway, I feel like a toddler, and it's because I don't know how this happened because I've sat at this chair before. I've done this podcast before, but I'm too short for the microphone, so I needed a cushion.
But
So
I'm glad that everyone knows there's a cushion and doesn't think that we're the same height.
It's interesting that this is something that bothers you.
Yeah, it is interesting because I never thought of myself as being like particularly into being a tall girl, but here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
And just so everybody knows, I'm shorter than Eve. I'm shorter than Eve.
I'm taller than Tamar.
I'm much shorter than Eve. I'm like a little itty bitty baby next to Eve. Anyway, to actually discuss the news of the day, we're recording quite early in the week because, again, it's our Independence Day special, so it's going to be a bit difficult to record later on. So it's still the early stages of the International Court of Justice's hearing testimonies from over 40 different countries, or maybe 40 exactly, different countries about Israel's blocking UNRWA within the Gaza Strip. And about how that's presenting challenges in terms of humanitarian aid to Gazans at a time in which, the IDF is carrying out mass operations still in the Gaza Strip. Obviously, super difficult for Israel to handle and to deal with. It's still very early on, so I don't want to discuss too much about what the different testimonies say because, again, like at this stage, we have heard very few. We've heard the Palestinian delegation and a few others, and that's basically it. Nevertheless, it's it's interesting to see as kind of the Israeli side of things, right? Because the humanitarian aid aspect is a delicate line that Israel has not been treading. It has avoided the line altogether. It has just cut it off. And that limb was our attachment to the democratic Western world. And the question is, and that's kind of the question that the ICJ is asking right now, is that going to block Israel off entirely in terms of on an ethical, moral level, and in terms of also international law? So that's a really big challenge that Israel's facing right now. What have you seen on it, Eve?
So interestingly, today, Alon Oel, who's still being held captive in Gaza, his parents put out a statement. They sat in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv and said new information about his status. And another thing they said was that they have their own plan for what Israel should be doing to advance the hostage deal right now. And there was a big focus on aid. They were saying that there should be a kind of humanitarian hostage deal, which is different from what we've heard from many hostage families who have switched over to pushing for for all the hostages to be released at once in one pe'ima, in one beat.
Right.
And they were saying there are people like Alon who we have testimony from released hostages that are in terrible condition and need immediate medical attention. Alon has, according to them, lost sight in one eye. His other eye can be saved. He suffered from shrapnel injuries all over his body. They're saying he needs medical attention immediately.
Which, by the way, already, just if for any arguments that have been made in terms of Hamas's behavior in favor of them somehow, and also international bodies, the Red Cross has not been to see these hostages, and that's the main reason that they are still in such dreadful conditions.
So we've had a lot of this kind of back and forth throughout the war where Israel said, okay, Red Cross is not coming to see Palestinian prisoners either. This kind of like throughout this war, we've seen a really horrifying dealing in people's rights that are meant to be inalienable. Thank you. Rights that are meant to be inalienable have just been thrown out as trading cards in this war.
Right.
And one of the things we've seen is that the hostages have not received proper medical care, have not received visits from the Red Cross. So the Alon Oel's family was saying, let's do a new deal. First of all, those in need of desperate medical attention get sent to a different country. Then humanitarian aid goes into Gaza. And then there were various other stages. They said they presented it. But I think it's just one interesting perspective on kind of the Israeli perceptions of aid. And should it be used as a tool? Should it not?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask, is that it's very interesting using humanitarian aid as a sort of bargaining chip, because I'm not necessarily sure that the world sees it like Israel does, as like a usable tool, so much as, again, like you said, an inalienable right
to food and
to
treatment.
Basic, care
Absolutely.
in some forms or another.
And we absolutely should point to the fact that many Israelis also think that this is something that Gazans have a right to receive. There have been literal food drives in Israel multiple times throughout the war where food, clothing, medicines have been collected for Gazans. So while that does seem to be more of a minority opinion, and many Israelis feel either difficult feelings or just outright feel that they should not be giving aid to Gaza, they're
right. Like the biggest argument that I've heard is, if one group says, what about children in Gaza? It's children, it's a basic right. Then the counter argument has been, those are the same children who danced on our graves. It's a complicated, nuanced discussion.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know though if we should say that saying that children would dance on our graves is nuanced. I think we can say that like children are innocent. I think that is fair for us to say. We can say we understand difficult feelings.
But I don't think that that's the message that they were trying to convey, right? It's not children don't deserve this because this. I think the argument that's being made there is a broader one of, and whether you agree or not, that's a different discussion, but is they have all been brainwashed into this hateful mentality, and it's an across the board thing. Whether that justifies not providing humanitarian aid.
No, I think we should and can say that it's not nuanced. Like I see what you're saying, and I think that ties into the emotional thing, but I think that we can and should say it's not nuanced that you should not be keeping aid from children. And you can say that the manner it gets to them or how we keep Hamas from getting this aid, you can say that those are nuanced issues, but the idea that like children, regardless of what they've been taught by their parents, do not deserve not to have food. Like that can be our baseline. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think many Israelis no longer feel that way. I think that many Israelis have been pushed really, really hard into very radical viewpoints because of the trauma of the war. It doesn't excuse it, but we can understand it.
And the trauma of the war, indeed, like bringing it back to Israel, has been caused by like this mass mishandling, which brings us into the discussion right now of the entire court proceedings surrounding Ronen Bar's firing as Shin Bet head. And so we discussed last week how Ronen Bar submitted his affidavit. Now Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has submitted his affidavit. And basically it's like this big back and forth, and it's kind of exhausting at this point of he said, she said.
It's exhausting. It's he said, she said.
It's he said, he said.
He said, he said. Honestly, good point. Important. He said, he said. And beyond that, it's also terrifying. I was reading Bar's response last night. So Netanyahu submitted his response yesterday, and then Bar submitted
a response to his response.
A response to his response. And a lot of it was public, and which is also terrifying, but I guess I'd rather know. But like it's Bar, like it's really Netanyahu coming out and saying what Bar's saying is wrong. It's exactly what you said. It's he said. Two opposing takes from two of the most powerful men in the country, having a public showdown. It's terrifying.
I think we did crack jokes in the office about it, and our producer Reuven's gonna kill me for mentioning this. But we did say, isn't it interesting how Ronen Bar sounds a lot like Aaron Burr? And for those who aren't like big
Hamilton fans,
big musical theater fans, Aaron Burr not only is a historical figure, but is a main character in the musical Hamilton, which is based on a true story. And it's just a very funny thing of like, okay, he's the guy who raises the alarm ultimately. And there's a song that Aaron Burr sings called "Wait for It."
You should sing as part of the song.
I should sing it myself. Copyright infringement.
Oh, true.
That's not something we need to
do that. Sorry, everyone. Hate to disappoint you.
But let's just say a lot of the lyrics are very easily manipulatable, and if even don't need much manipulation in order to suit this specific discussion. And that made for a nice little comedic break for us in the office surrounding all this really depressing stuff. But you were saying, okay, so we were talking about the hostages deals. I want to kind of talk about how the comptroller, Netanyahu Engelman, has kind of presented a new point in that facet. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Engelman has come out and said that he is going to start investigating how the state kind of treated and handled the families of the hostages as well as the hostages themselves. I don't know the scope of what he's going to go into. I kind of assume it will be primarily kind of administrative. Like, it's Engelman. He's not going to go ahead and say the political echelon should have decided to go in an all-reaching military operation and bring them out, or should have accepted a deal. Like, that's not really his purview.
True, but he has in the past quite thoroughly criticized governmental policies.
Absolutely.
And his reports are A, detailed.
Absolutely.
And B, touch on every facet of Israeli life.
I don't think at all that he's going to wear kid gloves or go light on the government. That's not what he does, which I think is incredible. Like, that's the definition of your job as the comptroller, the state ombudsman, is you're here to point to the problems so we can fix them. I do think, however, that kind of the political echelon's decisions are outside of his purview, and it will be much more, did the state manage to provide enough support to released hostages? Did the state manage to provide enough support to the families? So that will be really, really interesting. We know that a ton of support for the hostage families has come from civilian efforts, as with so many things that happened during this war.
There's a lot of dependence on civilian organizations.
Hostage
and there's
family forums, which are fundraising themselves.
And there's new ones that pop up every day. It's like it's become such a necessity that you know, people don't even question it anymore, that this is riding on the public's backs.
I mean, even before the war, Israel is like one of the central like hubs of nonprofits, which is interesting, right? It's like, is it a cultural thing? Is it people wanting to help? Is it that the government's not doing enough chronically? Is it all of the above?
I'd say all of the above, a little bit of everything.
So Engelman's going to look into this. I'm sure will be enlightening and interesting. I think that, as with every Engelman investigation relating to the war, it will just fall short of what Israelis actually want and need, which is an official state inquiry into this entire affair.
Absolutely.
It will be kind of another maybe Band-Aid. It will shed some light. It will be important. But again, like, I don't think it will have the same far-reaching authority as
I'm curious,
a state probe.
Yeah, I'm curious if it's going to look at, like, in terms of hostage treatment, released hostage treatment, I'm curious if it's going to look at something systemic like the health system or something like that, or if it's going to be something, you know, even earlier in the stage, like the, the receival, the klita of the hostages by the IDF. Because we know that the IDF, the process is hostages go from Hamas to Red Cross into Israel to IDF to hospital, usually helicopter, with family on the helicopter already, more family in the hospital. So I'm curious, like, what in all that process, and then from hospital, it's medical treatment and psychological treatment, it's whatever they need. I'm curious where in that entire trajectory is Engelman going to focus on?
Probably, I like knowing his reports. They're incredibly detailed. He has a huge team. He does really kind of detail work. So I would assume all of it.
Speaking of looking at IDF actions and kind of reviewing them, Israel struck in Lebanon very recently. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can, but only because I just listened to our military senior analyst, Jeremy Bob, talk about it with a great video that our listeners and viewers should check out on our YouTube.
Wow,
anyway.
Nice plug.
So the IDF struck Beirut, the Dakhia neighborhood in Beirut, Hezbollah stronghold. And what's interesting about this strike, according to Yonah Bob, is that it's kind of a risky strike, right? We don't make, like, the IDF kind of continually has smaller strikes in Lebanon against terror infrastructure and actors. And the IDF has a presence in Lebanon to kind of defend the border. But a big strike like this in Beirut, much riskier. They approved it with the U.S. And so Yonah Bob is saying that kind of defense officials were indicating to him that this was because there was a need for it. Like, there was a specific need for a much riskier airstrike. And that was precision missiles that were destroyed in the strike. That he explained it as, it's not just that Hezbollah would have been able to send a missile to Tel Aviv or to central Israel. It's that Hezbollah could have used this precision missile to target the Kiryat IDF base or like specific valuable targets. Hence the need for this kind of bigger or riskier operation.
Riskier, but seemingly like very targeted, very precise. If we're already talking about
targets and precision.
Yeah. At the same time, there was this attack in Iran on the Shahid Raja port. I may be butchering that. I apologize. In which over 400 people were injured. And the attack was unrelated to Israel, that we know. But it's another kind of like situation kind of that we're calculating into it. This comes at a time as well in which the U.S. is in these very, very delicate first steps with Iran in the making of some sort of new deal, potentially, maybe, possibly. I'm very, very grain of salt. That is what happened. What you need in this kind of
in the news. You need a grain of salt in the news at all times.
True,
every story.
Yes,
here you're like more salt.
Less salt. A single grain, a single teeny tiny little grain.
I think less grains means less skeptical, though.
Really?
I feel like we're more salt.
Lots of salt. Anyway, my point is the Trump administration is a little difficult to gauge on these things. So I don't want to, point a finger in one specific direction. Nevertheless,
the Trump administration difficult to gauge. What are you talking about?
Oh,
sorry,
Lord Almighty.
Cutting you off. Go back.
No. That's basically it, right? We see a huge attack, lots of people injured, and the question is where this kind of attack really comes from. It seems to be too much of a coincidence in terms of timing to not be somewhat related to these recent talks. Question is this going to progress? And more importantly, is this going to impact Israel? We have already had very, very, very big concerns regarding Iran in this recent war, obviously on top of the fact that all these terrorist organizations that we're currently fighting are funded by Iran, are controlled by Iran. On top of that, we have had direct confrontation with Iran. So let's hope that this doesn't signal some kind of advancement in that direction. And let's, in honor of Yom Ha'atzmaut, kind of focus on the things that this country needs, the things that makes Israel, which is a care for its people first and foremost, and that means hostages first and foremost, and they have to be in our hearts, they have to be in our minds.
And they've asked that to be in our Independence Day celebrations. They've asked that the families have come out and said, don't forget us. Like, this is not the time to be just wildly celebrating independence without a thought for the fact that 59 Israelis do not have their independence, and that by extension their families do not have their full independence, and they do not feel that they can celebrate this country whose promise is to keep its citizens, like any country in the world, but also especially the Jewish state, to keep its citizens safe from persecution because of who they are. And they don't feel they have that, and they ask that the public adjust their celebrations or commemorations or marking of this day accordingly.
And with that, I do want to transition to our interview this week, who is Tzur Goldin, the twin brother of Hadar Goldin, whose body has been held hostage in Gaza, not since October 7th, since far, far, far before that, and has yet to be returned, is one of the hostage bodies still being held in Gaza that the families are still fighting for. And it's this really depressing situation of, did the country forget about them until October 7th when they suddenly remembered, oh yeah, there are hostages now and there were hostages. So at least things are progressing right now in terms of potentially bringing Hadar back. At the same time, should not have let him leave our hearts and minds in the first place. And I think that's a really painful lesson that the entire country kind of learned in this entire process. And at the same time, like, what does this mean in a time, like, specifically in the year as Yom Ha'atzmaut? So with that, I'm going to take that away. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So how does this day resonate with you personally when not only is Hadar still being held in Gaza, but dozens of other hostages and hostages' bodies too? Today being a time in which we're both recognizing Yom HaZikaron and also recognizing Yom Ha'atzmaut.
So for me, this is a holy day. It's a very special, important day for the Jewish tradition and for Jews all around the world. I think it's specifically the recognition of the hostages and the Israeli civilians and soldiers who are still held in Gaza. I think this is a holy day. It was in the past 2 years, ever since October 7th, it's been clear that the hostages, especially the hostages that are unfortunately fallen, this is a day to commemorate them. My family is an example of 9.5 years before October 7th, where this was taken for granted. It wasn't that clear that this day should recognize and remark the hostages. So I'm, let's say, I feel that it's very meaningful, and I'm happy it turned out this way.
In the years after 2014, when Hadar was killed and taken, your family warned that abandoning soldiers in the field, even those dead, would corrode Israel's moral fabric. Do you feel, in light of October 7th, 2023, that prediction was kind of fulfilled?
Yeah, it's always bad to be the prophet that gives the wrong prophets. Actually, it wasn't a prophecy. It was written on the wall. We have been warning on that when society or leadership chooses to emphasis on interest rather than values, the core values of the Jewish people and Israel, then such events can happen. And unfortunately, that happened. We always said that everyone who abandons the fallen will soon find themselves abandoning the injured and deserting the live ones. We always felt this was written on the wall, and when that happened, we obviously felt a great sense of responsibility.
Yeah, it's a real slippery slope, and now it seems to have come to be. On October 7th itself, you were the one to call your parents, correct? To urge them to support the new hostage families?
Yeah, when October 7th, in the morning of October 7th, I was on my way to reserve duty. I was called, and we opened the hotline, and it was clear that something should be done. When the picture got more clear, we understood that there are hundreds of families that are attempting to reach us. The family that led the public effort to bring hostages until then. So we initiated a call for everyone with psychological support to come to us for any support that we can have, whether it's mental support, whether it's having the capacity to gather everyone for strategic options and thinking of how to address the Israeli authorities and how to address any advocacy at that point. And we immediately went public. We went to the media. My parents and sister, they were there. I was in reserve duty. I had to hang up my phone, and they made the call. When that happened, within 2 hours, 20,000 volunteers came into improvised offices that we made, and over 600 families were listed in our listings of the hostages. About 2 weeks later, we passed all the concentrated data and the platform we provided, not that only then, but in the past 10 years, to the current Mata Mishpachot HaChatufim, and most especially to the government official agencies. It's funny, but the first lists and the first advocacy efforts in the first week of October 7th was actually conducted by us, both with the U.S. administration or both with the Israeli government. I think this is really a result of, actually, I say this sadly, of 10 years of abandoning too many fronts in the battle for Israel hostages.
It's the expression works better in Hebrew. "Ze lo muvan me'elav." It doesn't work as well in English, saying it's not obvious. It's not something to be taken for granted that after what your family has suffered and what you have been through, and truly that sense and feeling of abandonment that you have had consistently, you nevertheless stood by those who are suddenly thrown into a similar or even identical situation.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't phrase it better than you did. I can just add that there are simple things that need to be set straight. For 9.5 years, we were battling a very, very strange and very bad negative reality where hostages were treated as collateral damage to the strategic thinking, strategic policies, and strategic agenda, national security thinking towards Gaza. It was combined, Gaza and Hamas, it was combined with the very apparent conceptions that we were now we're used to think about maintaining silence with Hamas, giving them all they need, making them the preferred entity rather than the PLA. A lot of conceptions build upon each other to build on immediate political interests, created a situation where hostages were collateral damages. There were 4 hostages. Now only one remains, my brother, from 2014 to 2015. And really, we were challenged by a mountain that we could not move. A very strong conception that the strategic values lie elsewhere and not in the re'ut, what we call in Hebrew the sense of shared fate, the highest value of everyone taking care of each other, fighting on each other. This just wasn't the case for 9.5 years. This must be clear. It doesn't mean we are a bad society. It doesn't mean that we went to a wrongful place. It's just a reality of 20 and 30 years of traumas and built upon traumas, building more and more conceptions. So this was the reality. This is the story of my family, the Goldin family, trying to move mountains, trying to mobilize public opinion, try to bring back together the most strategic values that we always fight for each other and never leave anyone behind. And after October 7th, there was that wake-up call, right? And so when that happened, we had to make sure that the wrongdoings that have occurred everywhere and corrupted all the mindset, all the thinking weren't apparent. So our main activities from October 7th through this day are to maintain the highest, that the hostages are the highest value, they're the highest target and strategy. All strategy goes towards there. We appreciate that this is the strategic place that we want to be in. So when we addressed all the political, now there's a political conversation or dispute or even divide, some may say, about how to handle Gaza or how handle the hostages, then our vector was really to wake up everyone who can and say, for 9 years, we have been struggling with the fact that a lot of political entities have supported the struggle and the efforts to bring hostages when it suited them politically. Okay, so it wasn't a constant agenda. They were always considered collateral damage, but when it suited to our targets, whether we were on the left side or the right side of the political map, they supported it. And what we do now is make sure that every political party is coordinated towards bringing all the hostages home. And if you're of view of certain political views, then the main target is bringing them home. Take and deploy all your political thinking towards there. And never again, and I say this never again, that this term is, I say that constantly, never again reach a situation again where hostages are collateral damage. Any society cannot treat any section or population in its composition as collateral damage. And I think this is the lesson that we bring to this commemoration day, this Yom HaZikaron.
I think a lot of people really resonated with your message quite immediately, especially after October 7th, when that kind of, hit home for a lot of people, most of the country, I think, really. But I know I personally was quite surprised to find that almost immediately there were voices that were less enthusiastic about focusing on the return of hostages. Were you surprised by this being something that some people, even in a situation like October 7th, nevertheless maintained?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. Unfortunately, I wasn't surprised. I always say when you see reality clear, you're able to deal and solve all situations. But this is the case. It's a very unfortunate one. It's a reality we regret to admit. Yeah, that was clear. As I said, the message was written on the wall. It was, and it will continue. This sort of vector, this disturbing vector of putting the hostages aside and making them the problem. Maybe only tackling it's always, in the political point of view, the easier path. The hardest issue to tackle would be to actually bring hostages home. The easiest thing is to take those minority groups, and they're really small, the real minority, silence them and handle them in a way. It's very interestingly, for many years, my family wasn't in the headlines, and we struggled to be, on the agenda. And a lot of times, the PR strategy of the government agency of the Prime Minister office was to talk about the commitment to bring hostages in Independence Day and Commemoration Day, right before Rosh Hashanah, or in days where the attention of the sort of sense shared fate draws back to hostages, and why on earth is there any reason why aren't those hostages home for the many years. And so it was sort of, I would say, a way to put the families aside, to sort of say in a very fine speech in a graveyard, in a commemoration day,
I acknowledged you, see? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I acknowledged you. So so I say this not to mark that that we are in bad times, but just to point out eagerly that now we're on the turning point. Now is our time to correct the misconducts, and they are misconducts that have been done to the Israeli society. It doesn't matter what reason they came to be. We were, and we are still are, in a situation where hostages may be considered collateral damage, and they may be considered as something that disturbs the peace or disturbs the daily agenda of a lot of other things that are important. But I want to highlight here in this day, most importantly than any other day, we as Israelis have a lot to complain about. We have a lot of things that we think that should be corrected. And I see a lot of people expressing their concern about the future of the younger generation. What can they be proud of? What's the future of Zionism? There's absolutely one value that can bring us all together and can bring us pride and initiate the repair of the society. And this is that we all need to fight for each other, and we all need to be there for each other. And there's no example better than hostages that need to be brought home by any religion value that exists. And to put it like more symbolically, we can take the Israeli flag. The Israeli flag has the two triangles that are combined with each other. For many years, in context of the hostages, context of Israeli soldiers now fighting in any front, those triangles are a lot of time forgotten and being separated. And I think the highest moral value that should be updated in our chart, in our very holy chart, should be that we have two triangles that need to be combined, and those signify that we are there for each other no matter what, no matter what's our identity. This is the Jewish spirit, this is the Israeli spirit, and this should be atop of it all. And when you're intelligent enough, wise enough, have the history context, which is most important, you understand that when you find this one study case that you fight on, this one study case that you put all your means into, which are hostages, which are people in danger, this is sort of the course that brings all the other different situations that we are involved with and corrects them.
It's so interesting because a lot of the argument for, I mean, what you're describing is unity, is some level of unity, but the argument that we're seeing today in Israel that's like the biggest one for unity is kind of the other side, is the parallel, which is if we're worrying for our hostages, then we're not worrying for our soldiers. And I think that's a false negative, but I'm curious how you would respond to that as a different representation of unity.
Okay, so I think it's not at all unity. This representation, this representation is the wrong path that can lead us to the next October 7th. And I also think that people that are behind these sort of thinking are PR people that it's in their interest to create this divide to receive their political agenda, whether it's there or there. I think it's the most ununified thing to do is to say soldiers and hostages are of opposite interest. No, this is the same interest. The only way that we go to Gaza, we need to is the way to bring hostages home. I'm a soldier. I'm a soldier in reserve duty. I've been all over, and I've been with people and myself putting into jeopardy. I can tell you very consciously, definitely, all soldiers up there in the field, they believe that they are there to bring the hostages home. They're here for that shared fate. They're not there because they believe the fate of the hostages is against the interest of the fate of destroying Hamas. They are there to make it happen. The problem is with the leadership that that takes those two interests and contrast them rather than combine them. Honestly, I don't think there's any justification if you are committed to the Israeli values to contradict those two.
Alon Oel his remains were returned to Israel last year, as well as the other hostages that were taken with Hadar. Has that kind of changed your family's perspective? As in, has it raised hopes or maybe deepened frustrations when it comes to Hadar's return?
It mixed feelings. First and upmost, we were leading the only effort. We represented all four families. We were leading the effort to bring all four hostages, Israeli hostages, back home from Gaza, from the shift between 2014 and until October 7th. There were no prouder or happier people rather than my family to see Oron Shaul come back home. Also Avera Mengistu and Ishana Sayad coming back home. Thousands and thousands of people were there in the sun and the rain during wartime and in peaceful time, fighting for those people. We were there all the time when our voices were silenced. So to see them coming back home is the fruits of that efforts that have been done. But I must say, yes, it's frustrating to see that Hadar is back. Actually, not only that he's still in Gaza, he's increasingly becoming a symbol of resistance and becoming a symbol in the enemy's side. And we are completely disturbed by the fact that also, and this must be said, in order to bring the Israeli civilians that were brought, Israel has let go of a constant package that was held for at least 7 years. We were told from the Prime Minister and from the all agencies that there's one package to bring Hadar and all the hostages home, and that is exchanging them with 56. Now they're talking about 47 terrorists held in captivity that we're taking back after the Shalit deal, and were exchanged after the Shalit deal and being recaptured during Operation Protective Edge. This was what they called soceity, Protective Edge package, and all that package has been given, leaving Hadar out in order to bring the Israeli hostages in the late. So now we're in the late deal. So now we're in a situation where Hadar has no real solution in terms of negotiation for a deal, when all the cards that had been put on the table for him has actually been given away. So we are disturbed by that fact, disturbed by that Hadar is a symbol for many, many Israelis, and also a symbol for that the enemy talks about, and why Israel should bring this soldier home, this excellent officer that fought on the front in Operation Protective Edge and have been left there consciously for too long.
It's this kind of frightening concept of you're the people closest to him and you have no control over the narrative within which he's used or referred to.
Yes, we have no control. Which narrative? Do you mean the Hamas narrative?
The public narrative in general, whether it be Hamas or whether it be Israeli, it's something that's out of your control, and that feels almost like an intentional inaccuracy, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so, but we also believe in the Israeli society and the ability to repair, amend, and create a different future. And this was our strategy. This was what we believe in and how we operated ever since 2014, ever since the moment we understood that my brother was kidnapped and later killed in captivity. We understood that we have no greater belief than belief in the Israeli society and the Jewish community around the world. So this is why we established so many organizations, established so many initiatives for this one cause, and we believe in it, and we believe we can all change the narrative. In fact, it's changing now all throughout. I always say, my father, me, all my family, we walked and knocked on every single door that we could. This is our main career, bringing my brother home. This is my main agenda. And we walked for 10 years, over 10 years. We didn't miss anyone. We went tirelessly to walk and talk to any school that exists in Israel, any officer military academy, and every mechina, every educational spot. And now, when you look at the officers, they're not the senior officers, but the officers that are there on the field in the military, and the people and the executives that are now in office in many places. Now they're not the senior. Now they're the sort of the junior ranked line. But they all made contact with the Goldin family that were the crazy people going all around calling and shouting for those values. And we believe in the future of the Israeli society. And now I think it's a whole struggle for the whole Israeli and Jewish community to put this value. I strongly emphasize again the value that we never leave anyone behind, and that we build a structure and a system that never overlooks at hostages. Unfortunately, the errors and the sort of the misguiding conceptions are still there. Okay, it's still there. When you look at the way the negotiations are handled, when you look at how the cabinet war and foreign affairs see things and plan things, you can see it's still there. But one thing is true: they can never ignore what happened to the Goldin family. I'm saying Goldin family as a mark, as a symbol, and they can never overlook the strategic need to put the hostages in the center.
So you mentioned that this is like a core value. This is core value to the Israeli, I think, ethos, but it's also a core value in Judaism, and that's not just limited to Israel. Now, you now live in the diaspora. You went to Harvard, and how do you view, or how rather has your viewpoint on Israel's struggles and moral debates changed through the perspective of living in the diaspora, or just being a part of the international community in general?
Yeah, well, now I came for studies. Actually, I'm going to a policy school, trying to come back to Israel and be a part of a new generation that generates new line of thinking, and actually performs, frankly, an ability to run a country and an ability to create better, worthy leadership and strategy. And here I found myself, thinking long term, and immediately I found myself combating anti-Semitism and really coming back to the core struggle of the Jewish people from the Holocaust until today. And now, from this perspective, I do have a much more, let's say, clear view of what we need to tackle and combat. And I'm positive that no matter what are the political opinions of the current U.S. administration thinking or ideology or whatever thinking we have about this administration, something should not be negotiated in any way, and that's the anti-Semitism towards Jews in context of Israel being the only Jewish state and the only mark of Jewish survival and Jewish culture and nationality and identity being it. And so the disturbing trend would not stop in October 7th shift, and even not post October 7th. And the events that happened after October 7th here in the diaspora should and must come back. Like I said, like we talked about the hostages, and we sort of said, yeah, it was a wake-up call, and now the trend is coming. It was a wake-up call not to abandon hostages, and now we're nearing the same situation of abandoning them again. We should not stop combating anti-Semitism if the waves or tides get down. My line of thought now, looking from school in academy and from the diaspora point of view, is that I think the Jewish community should wake up even more than we think that we woke up, and start investing in the academic research and academic work to change the mindset towards sort of the equality between anti-Semitism towards Israel and anti-Semitism as a whole, and make this a true reality, not in the next year and 5 years, but in 10 and 15 and 20 years. We're looking at the future, and there's a lot that should be done now.
I see. And just as a final conclusion question in general, do you have a message for our listeners, watchers, readers for this Yom Ha'atzmaut, for Independence Day?
Yeah, so this Independence Day, there should be no one more proud than anyone who's Israeli and Jewish in those 2 days. Not only that these are the holy days and the most important days I believe, for the Jewish nation and the Jewish future. These are specifically in context of recent reality. This is the days to repair our values and repair our society. And there should be no one more happy than all of us commemorating these days, when we are now focused and we have the compass of the hostages, the sense of shared fate, the compass that says there are 2 triangles in our flag, our beautiful flag, that should be combined, that no one is left behind, and that we have this one study case, we have that one project that we can and need to invest all our resources in order to start the trend of correcting everything that should be repaired. So I'm a proud Israeli, proud Jew, talking to all of you here in this commemoration day, the 77th commemoration day, and soon to be Independence Day. And thank you for listening. Thank you for having me, and please raise the voice of the hostages, of the families, because soon enough we won't have that voice. We won't have that power and ability of something that should be in the top of priorities for everyone.
So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Jerusalem Post podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. You can find us on jpost.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, all of the above, wherever you get your podcasts. Be well, and happy Yom Ha'atzmaut.